So, my friend, we meet again.
Good morning, Earl. Yes, here we are again. Seems like
Good
we're
afternoon.
talking about the same topic, huh? This timeless topic of resilience and radical resilience. At least for me, I'll just jump right in. It feels very relevant right now because of all of the things going on in the world that are really testing our resilience and stealing our focus and stealing our attention and our energy. And so radical resilience feels relevant right now because there are radical attempts to test our resilience.
Yeah, I like that. And I think, you know, one of the things that really helped me to understand radical resilience and embody it was really about modeling what the most successful entrepreneurs do.
Mm,
And one of the key things that I saw was the longevity that they had. So the reason why they were successful was because of longevity. And the reason why they had longevity was because they were resilient. And I think when you've got challenging times that we're seeing right now, and to be honest with you, it has been going for quite a long time, but it seems to be increasing. I think that's where we need to lean into that resilience in a much more intelligent and intentional way. And I think that's the thing that starts to make it much more radical because quite often we see the bounce back. Something happens and I get up, and something knocks me down again and I get up, and that's the frame for resilience. And it's not radical in the way that we talk about it and approach it. And so how we navigate this challenging time is going to be a really interesting one. And, we can share some of the techniques and what we do to also embody that for ourselves.
hmm Yes, I think this is an important time. It feels almost to me like a calling, like a very big opportunity for us to really bring our awareness and our focus inward. Because the call and that opportunity comes from this intense call for our attention and our focus and our energy to be outside of us, to be focused on things that are going on outside of us externally. I mean, in some cases, things that are happening on the other side of the world that have in realistic terms, in practical terms, very little impact on our day-to-day lives. Um, we can and do because it's just part of the way our brains work with negativity bias, and our brains are storytelling mechanisms. So we often get into stories about how what's going on around the world has a direct impact on our lives. But when we really dig deep, and question the stories and question the validity of the thoughts and the beliefs around those stories, we can start to unpack and realize that maybe it doesn't have the direct impact on our lives, at least not here and now, that we have come to believe it does, or have come to react to a thought or a belief that it does. And the reality also is that we don't know what the next moment holds, right?
Mm.
So we can make projections, we can tell stories. It's a natural part of the human condition to tell stories around what's going to happen. That is part of how we make meaning out of the world. But very often, those stories are not at all what the reality turns out to be, how the reality of the situation unfolds. But believing that story takes us out of the present moment, takes us out of our power, our focus. It drains our energy. It gets us emotionally hooked and um, and out of our power, out of our ability to control our experience of the here and now. So that's where I think there is so much opportunity. Hi, Anya.
Hey, my
Welcome.
Hey,
friends.
Anya,
Hey, so happy to see you too. My two favorite
Yeah.
people.
Yes.
great,
Yes.
great to
Yes.
have you here, and definitely going to want to hear some of your insights on this as well. So,
Yes,
um,
definitely.
I am here. I'm
so
here.
I think, just speaking to what you just said there, and just a quick recap for you, Anya, and for the listeners, I think one of the key things is, as you said, telling ourselves stories is part of our makeup, right? That's something that we do. That's one of the ways that we make sense of information. So that's how the brain actually, we think in metaphors and stories. That's how we actually make sense of what's going on around the world. So the storytelling it's an interesting one, because storytelling is, in a way, you can frame it as a technology. The challenge becomes is the story that we are telling ourselves. When the story becomes disempowering, when the story says, it's help, I'm helpless, it's hopeless, I'm not deserving. It's those stories that people have, and they, just run over and over and over in their mind, that becomes a real problem. So, and this is probably one of the first techniques that people can start to employ, which is by journaling and noticing those stories and writing those stories out, and then seeing it. So that story is no longer just in your head, just kind of moving around and being dynamic. You've got a place to be able to respond to that story. So just understanding what that story is. And I think it's really important what you're saying there, because whilst there are things happening in the other side of the world, and we think, oh, this is really impacting me, because we do care about it, right? It's not that we don't care about those other people, or the people in the other side of the world, that whatever's going on for them, we do care about them. And we might want to do something about it. And we might not be as helpless as what we think we are. So writing to your local senator or councillor, or in the UK, MP or whatever, just, there are always things that we can do. And as you've said before, Terry, every action that we make has an impact. We may not know what the ripples of that impact can be, but it's going to have an impact. So I think that's really important to recognize that there is no positivity in looking at a story and saying, I'm helpless, this is hopeless, I'm powerless in that story. So yeah, just inviting yourself or Anya to kind of respond to that.
Yeah, well, Anya, I'll give you a moment to collect your thoughts, because you probably didn't realize you were going to be at like an active. I mean, I
I'm
hope you
always
are.
ready,
Anyway,
guys. I'm always ready,
I know
guys.
you are. I don't even know why I said that. Of course you are. Of course you are. We both know you. We know you are. But just to react to what you just said, I just want to share a quick story. And Earl, I think you know the story. On you might not. But in terms of the stories that we tell ourselves about how, even if we're not being directly impacted, which, I mean, look, here in the United States, there are massive changes going on in policies. And so many people, and with the stock market, so many people are directly impacted. But there are some segments of society that are more directly impacted, and we tell ourselves stories about those people as well, right? So I just recently had this situation come up where I was concerned about someone that I know, that I had created a story about how terrible their experience must be right now, what they must be going through, how alienated they must feel. And so I reached out to her and I said, I just want to check in with you, see how you're doing, see how you are navigating, these very difficult times for transgender people. She's transgender. And her response was completely not what I expected. Her response was, I've never been better. I'm not letting any of this inside of me. Is some of it having an impact on my community and on me? Absolutely. But I clearly understand that I'm in control of how I experience everything that's going on. And I'm stepping into that control. I'm stepping into that power. And I've never felt more empowered. I've never had a stronger community. I've never felt more held. And it was so refreshing, because I had told myself this story around how alienated and marginalized she must feel. So even though, and I don't want to discount the fact that I am certain there are plenty of people that do feel that way. But again, so often we tell ourselves a story that ends up stressing us out, that sometimes leaves us in a state of chronic stress, which I think is a lot of what we're seeing right now. People are chronically stressed out about what's going on in the world, and that impacts our physiology, and impacts our health, and impacts our ability to think clearly. It impacts our relationships. And sometimes all of that impact happens because of a story we've told ourselves that turns out to not be true. So that's part of, why I love having these conversations, and why I love telling actual stories, things that have actually happened outside of our heads, because it tells the story of what is really happening and gives us an opportunity, or invites us to question what we think we know for sure.
I love that. I concur so much, and I love joining this conversation because I think it's so important. And what's funny is that I think I'm a pretty level-headed person. I'm pretty optimistic. But to your point, like the last couple of days, I made the mistake of looking at the news and and felt the energy. And then I was like, okay, I got over it. I was reflecting. Then I saw this article about like doomsday scenario about AI. And I was like, again, like world extinction by computers kind of thing, right? Again, like, oh my gosh. But every time I go into that, like now I've had this more of a level setting, like, can I sit down with the energy and see where it's coming from? I'm very intentional about not letting fear motivate my intentions and actions, because that's never a thing. So whenever I find that I'm in the state of like alerts, like that's a sign to me that, and my body's in this state, I feel like it's a sign that something is off. Like I'm not thinking correctly. Can I give it back? But what I come back to is like, the only action we have in the moment which feels helpless is like, how can I actually do something good for others right now? I know I can't go and change, all these things in the world, but if I choose to be in this fear, like, am I showing up people around me in any kind of positive way, right? There's already so much you can choose to be an agent that actually can do something good, because you're like, I know what things are, they are. Like, I'm not changing them, I'm accepting them. And if I accept things, then I can do something positive about it. Like, you both know Michael Singer, he says, like, hey, if I am in a part of a car crash and you can't handle blood, I don't want you to show up at a car crash. Like, I hope you're not my first responder, right? So it's not that you, at a car crash, you have to accept, like, this is happening. How can I help? And I think same thing in situations of now is like, it's not that you have to say, everything is fine, everything is magical, rainbows and unicorns. Because say, yes, things are the way they are. I accept it, and now I can react and be an agent for positive change in my life and others. Because this, again, it's not even about, you have to change the politics or the, economy. It's like, hey, can I show up for my family and be a positive light? Can I show up for my friends and check in with them? Can I just be somebody that chooses to make a positive impact no matter what's happening? Because that's really the only choice we have sometimes. It's like, in my daily life, what can be a benefit? And I see no positivity of giving the fear. Like, we feel horrible about it, and we can't do anything good to the people around us. And it was funny about perspective. I was at a dentist, and they employed somebody who is an immigrant from Ukraine. So they fled Ukraine because of the situation. And she was saying how, because of the political situation, there's fear about them being deported, right? And, like, here I am stressing about little things here, and she's like so happy about her life, and just like, hey, regardless of what happens, I just hope that the war ends in Ukraine, because like my family is like really literally hearing gunshots and stuff like that. And I just had this perspective, like, here's somebody who is being so grateful for everything they have, having complete different sense of, vulnerability and security and danger, like really close to home. And yet they're grateful for everything they have. So sometimes it's like, wow, what am I worried about? The story we tell ourselves, and then you see like what's happening, how people can handle reality. So my 2 cents, like, yes, everything is crazy, but what good is it to give into the fear? And the only choice we have is be a positive agent, and then just reframing. People have such different conditions, and if they can see positivity, like, that motivates me to challenge, like, okay, let's rise up a little bit from my fear.
Yeah, I absolutely, second that, edify that. And it's interesting because I'm in London today, and I'm going to an event that's run by a charity called Project Remake, which works with ex-convicts who are now becoming entrepreneurs. So
love that. Love that.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that, when I can, I mentor on that program, because again, some of these people have come from really challenging backgrounds. They've come from really traumatic situations, and then they get incarcerated, and then they leave, and then they've got to build again from new. And what I love about it, which is this honoring how challenging life can be, and at the same time holding this other perspective of optimism and looking for the best in a situation and believing in themselves. And when I look at my life, which I honor and recognize, and I'm grateful for the privileges that I've had, and so how people, so I'm learning, it's kind of really interesting because I go there to mentor, but what I learn is just totally amazing in terms of that human spirit and that entrepreneurial spirit. It's the process of the phoenix. You go through the flames, you go through the fire, you come up and you rise up from the ashes. And just really looking at that and saying, no matter how bad things we think are, they could always be worse. And because they could be worse, it doesn't mean that's what we need to focus on. We can focus on what actually elevates us. So, and that's what I was getting from what you're sharing as well, Anya. So thank you so much for that.
I love that you brought that up, and I didn't know the conversation was going to go this way, but I love that it has, because my experience has been, and for worse or for better, I've had a lot of family members that have ended up in doing time in prison. And what I know for sure is that inmates are some of the most innovative, creative, resilient people that there are. So if you've ever seen an inmate make a chocolate cake out of ingredients that you never even thought you could make food out of, much less a chocolate cake, but so much more than that, right? So taking that is a classic example of how the stories that we tell ourselves can serve to hinder us. If we stay stuck in this story that that we're broken, that because of our past, which so many people that are incarcerated, it is because of these patterns and beliefs that were instilled and trauma that happened early on in their lives. And they didn't have the time or the resources, the inspiration to start on the healing path. But so many of them do while they are in prison. But when they can get past that, and if they can move beyond that and come out of the prison or the jail system and take that creative energy into an entrepreneurial endeavor, I would imagine some of the most creative and innovative people that we have. Unfortunately, we don't have enough mechanisms like what you're working with, Project Remake. I love that, Earl, and I'd love to look into that more and talk more about that here on Radical Resilience, because I really do feel like so many people that have been, and it's not just inmates in the jail system. Viktor Frankl is an absolute great example of this too. People that seemingly have everything taken away from them seem to find the most within them. That's when they find the most within them, and figuring out how do we capitalize on that and how do we take that and create a world that is more dynamic and full of healing and really celebrate that finding. And Michael Singer did that work also, Anya. I'm sure you know that. So yeah, I love that idea, and I love that it went there, because it's such a wonderful example of radical resilience.
Can I add to that? It reminds me that a lot of times in my own life as well, a lot of times we start thinking about another way of being resilient when things just hit the fan. Like when things get really bad, we're like, okay, I can keep at it. I'm gonna keep at it. I'm gonna keep working. I'm gonna go my goal. And then there's a point where like, no, like you're burned out, or you lose your job, or things just don't go. And then you're like, okay, I have to do something differently. right? And that's where a point I think a lot of people say, like, this is a point where I have to take responsibility for myself, which is both terrifying because you're like, okay, well, everything I've done up to this point is because of me, but also you realize, well, everything that can happen now is something I can own as well. And that's where you start to think, like, what is not working for me anymore? Like that's I think the point that happens. And I love that we're talking about this now because my hope is that more people will see, like, I don't have to get to that point of just being in the very bottom to start questioning what is not working for me.
Mm.
And my hope is people see, like, hey, there's a really strong, positive, life-changing process that happens when you start questioning that right now to say, what is not serving me? Instead of just being so busy, just trying to chase and then finding out when it's kind of late that that's happening.
Mm.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'd like to touch upon, and thank you for everything that you shared, is the what's going on for us when we're not listening to those stories. Because when we think about sometimes how people get through what they get through, and this comes back to kind of the undertone or the backstory behind this particular call, this session, is how do we stay true to our core when we've got this chaos happening outside, when we've got these stories that are going around that are trying to not serve us and make us disempowering or whatever. What is it that we are able to do, or you are able to do, and how are you doing that? And I'll quickly start because I'm talking. So two things come to mind. One is, we are part of larger communities, but even in ourselves, us three are a community in of ourselves. And how we reflect back to each other, what we say to each other, how we support each other, I think is really important. So, just having those people outside of us, and in some ways to challenge us. And that comes to another point. So a dear friend of mine was going through some, not major stuff, but I noticed that her energy wasn't where it needed to be. So I kind of questioned, should we have a call? And she said, yeah, let's have a call. But she noticed that she was not necessarily acting in from the space of her energy. Anyway, we went back and forth. I kind of kept reflecting some things back to her. And she said, I'm good. And she said something really, which I found profound. And I didn't respond to that last message, which was, I'm going to do the stuff that I want to do. And then if I get frustrated, I'll go and do something else. And the question that came up, and I didn't ask her, but the question that came up for me was, do you have to wait until you're frustrated to make that change? Does it have to get to that level? Or, it might not be frustration for some people. It might be despair. It might be depression. It might be angry. It's kind of like, actually, can we set a mechanism before we get to that level where it's like, actually, I'm just distracted, or I notice I'm tired, or I know I'm slightly irritable. And that's the indication to move to something else rather than going to that next level. So, A, that self-awareness, and B, having a community. So yeah, I'd like any other kind of reflections and thoughts on that.
Note to self, have Earl as your friend. Energy friend.
Well, I'm pretty sure he was talking about me.
He was
So
chuckling the whole time.
yeah, that just illustrates the point that he was making, which is be really intentional about the people that you have around you and that you have in your circle, because it does make a difference. It does sort of help bring us out of our own uh, heads and our own habits that are so easy to fall into. I mean, even with those of us that get up every day and do the work and teach the work of inner awareness and self-awareness, and we still fall back into old habits. And so that, to your point, Earl, it's so important to have people around you that can kind of call you on your own bullshit. So thanks for that, Earl. And I also wanted to respond, Anya, to what you were talking about earlier, which is, when we we live in the world, right? So of course we will experience news and other people's perception of what's going on. And we will be impacted. Social media, what's out there, quite literally the energy field that's going on, depending on where we are. And being able to step back and ask ourselves, how do I want to show up? How can I be of service? How do I want to be a positive influence or a force for good, even in all of this? So I just want to say, Anya, your ability to do that has very palpable and measurable results. So you could easily, you're a founder, right? You are out looking right now for investors, angel investors, and your attitude and your sense of resilience and your not being driven by fear has energy. Your positivity, your authenticity, your truthfulness has energy to it, and it that energy spreads like energy does, and it creates movement and action and inspiration in other people as well who want to do the same thing. So it's not just good stuff to talk about, it actually has results, you know? This, like, you are getting investors in your business now at a time when, you know, the world, if you look at the world, if you look at the news, you would think that everybody would be afraid to invest. Everybody wants to hold on to their money. But there are people investing in your business, and it's because of you and your energy and how you're showing up in the world, and you're accepting what is and also choosing how you're going to experience your life and how you're going to show up in the world. That's a beautiful example of the power of our own, how we experience our lives and how we choose to show up.
Thank you, Sarah. If I can elaborate a little bit about, like, like the startup has been going on for about a year now, and I really made it a journey of surrender and self-discovery, right? Like, it's a startup, and usually it's all about going faster and the grind and this perception of money hunger. And I was like, can I actually use this as a self-experience to where I'm gonna be purposeful, I'm gonna take care of myself and be more aligned with my inner self and see what happens, right? Can I not let it be a fear-based experience where it's about like not having enough, doing something faster? And so it's actually been a cool experience to see over the months, every time when I'm fearful, catching myself on it. That's part of the motivation of this whole experience, is that it really puts you every single day in situations where you feel like you can worry about something or be fear-based, or like, and so that's been a funny thing, that people think that this is all about just, self-good, all about like kumbaya, yoga, whatever. It's just like, but it has such tangible overlap to my professional life. Right? Like, again, the energy I have, the ability to be resilient, is directly correlated to my ability to be aware of where my energy is going. It's directly tied to me being aware, like, just how much energy is sucked up worrying about stuff, just so much like fear, like, again, decisions, like all these things make a difference. And every time I choose not to let fear motivate me, good things happen. Like, again, it's like peeling that bandage. So I've developed this trust in myself, really, because, again, the more I learn to be aware of my energy, how I'm responding to it, the more I can trust that I can, rise up to different challenges, and people feel it. But again, I just want to say, like, this whole process has been very much an inner process that helped the startup succeed, because it's not like we're never showing up differently. Like, how the inner work we do is never separate from how we show up to the world and show up professionally. It's all directly correlated. So I love that we're doing this, because I think it's essential. And people think like there's a business mode for them, and then there's a home mode for them. That's never the case. We're always full humans. So whatever you do is going to affect your other side. And I see, even in the VC and startup world, there are people doing more, what's it called, sound therapy and meditation. Like, even that is becoming more commonplace. I don't think it's fully yet. I think it's more of a buzz than a real integration. But I think it makes such a huge difference for you to be mindful of this, and then it becomes a superpower of yours. And can I say just one more thing? Like, even about money, like, I think the reason this money has been flowing in is because I've really been aware, like, where am I having energy that's pushing away things? Like, where am I having fear or something pushing away, what I can do, my potential? How can I interact with people who have, and it's all been very conscious self-working, saying, hey, if there's an issue, I created it. that means I can address it as well. So let's start the inner work of making that happen.
So beautiful.
Yeah, just briefly, that's why I love what I consider solopreneurs, and I consider you one, Anya. The S is for self-aware, the O is for ownership, the U is for your unique ability, embracing your unique ability, and the L is for the legacy that you want to have in terms of the impact in the work and the world that you want to bring. And it all starts with the inner work. It doesn't start anywhere else. It all starts with the inner work. So thank you so much for that. And we're at time.
We are at time. That flew by. Yeah. I think for anybody who watches this recording, what we might also do, Earl, we haven't talked about this, but I thought we might be very succinct about dropping in some strategies and some tactics in the LinkedIn comments, so that because I know part of what we want to do is we want this to be very practical and actual takeaways that people can use in their daily lives. So much of that Anya shared. So we can summarize that and drop it in the chat, in the comments rather, so that everyone has easy access to it.
Brilliant. Excellent. And I think for the next session, we're going to have a guest.
We are going to have a guest. Yes, super excited about that. April 23rd at 12:30 Eastern, 1 p.m. Eastern. It'll get scheduled. Yes, Esther Zeladon, right? Is that how you say her name?
Yeah,
Zeladon? Yes.
That's correct. And
She's
we had
amazing.
a guest this time. So so thank you for being the guest this time, Anya. So yeah, not scheduled, but more than welcome.
I hope that was okay.
I love it. Was
Absolutely.
wonderful. It was perfect. It was perfect.
It was.
Okay. Have a wonderful day, friends.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.